I'm Giulia Panozzo, and this is SEO in 2025.
Giulia, what's your number one SEO tip for 2025?
My number one tip for 2025 in SEO is invest in expanding your skill set.
So why would you want to do that?
Because I feel like we have been put through a time of unprecedented change, and investing in our skill set is the one thing that we have control over. So, SEO has not been about search engines only for a long time now. It's been constantly changing. In the last 12 months only, we've had 10 confirmed algorithms. And the more we accept that we have to run with this change, rather than trying to adapt old patterns and strategies to a new landscape, the more successful and the more satisfied we can be in our job, I feel.
Okay, so you feel that essentially SEO has changed more in the last year than it might have done over the last 5-10 years?
Absolutely. I feel like now, there's been not only a change in the way that, like even the guidelines maybe have been more overt about certain aspects of search, but also it's been changing search behavior, because right now information is even more immediate, more available. We had the rise of AI, we had AI overviews, but not only. If we go, at the transactional level, for example, now the journey to click is elongated because we have filters, and basically Google is becoming an e-commerce in its own regards, right? So whatever was position 2 for us last year is not what is position 2 right now, because we have 17 results before us that are all in filters and all in organic panels. So yeah, I feel like, we've been through a lot of change. And not only this change is displayed in the way that we see results, but also in the way that people adapt to search, on Google and other search engines.
So because we experience so much change, sometimes you think that you need to learn something, but it's not necessarily the most important thing to be doing with your time. So how do you decide upon the most important things to be learning and ensuring that you're up to date on?
Yeah, I feel like it starts with us. It starts with what we really want to do, where our priorities lie, not only as individuals, but obviously as organizations. We've seen SEOs changing, so we can't expect our profession to stay the same. And at the same time, organization cannot expect, the same reports. So I would say, based on what your role is and what your goals are within the organization, starting prioritizing, is it a new skill that I learned that I need to develop? Is it a new strategy altogether? Or is it maybe the way that I think about learning altogether? Because there's also different mindsets that come into play. There's, personal and professional mindsets that have an impact on the way that we approach our job, and also that we approach new relationships or existing relationships with our clients and our colleagues. I think it really depends on your priorities, in the, identifying new skills, and also on your points of strengths and what your natural passions are. Because we don't only want to do our job, doing our job is 8 hours of our day. And we want to be doing something that actually interests us. I feel like sometimes it's overlooked.
Well, hopefully your job interests you as well. But
yeah, yeah, of course. But I feel like sometimes, we tend to be really procedural, and we tend to just go with the flow. And I've been, doing that myself for years, probably before I actually sat down and was like, okay, what is something that I can, for example, automate? What is something that does not serve me right? Because sitting on Excel for 6 hours is, great, because it takes my mind off other things. I don't need much brain power to do that. But at the same time, there is other ways that I can have, my time more free to do something that's more constructive. Because sometimes we tend to not wanting to learn new skills because we feel like we don't have the time, but that's because we might not be making time for that skill or that new strategy.
And it was interesting that you said what goals you have within your organization. Should you not have personal goals as well? terms of where you want to be in 5 years, 10 years time, in terms of what role you want to be in. So many people nowadays might be made redundant or might not be in their roles for that long. So surely they need to have a bigger picture idea of where they want to be personally further into the future.
Absolutely. And I don't think that now, I don't think it's sustainable now to think, where do I want to be in 5-10 years? Because it's not we're not even in a place where we have the capacity to know what search is going to be.
Is this because of AI?
It's because of AI. It's because of change. In general, technology has made huge advances, I guess.
Advances.
Thank you. My English is failing me.
It's perfect.
But yeah, I feel like it was much more stable a few years ago. Maybe it was much more. I don't even know, to be honest, if it really was, or if we have the perception that it was more stable, because now we have we have more exposure to this change. But I think in general, when we want to start identifying where we want to be, is literally looking at where are we good at? What are we good at? Where do we want to go? And I know that sometimes it's quite, scary to analyze this from a constructive perspective, because we tend to be I'm not really good at this. There's so many other people that are more expert than me in this one topic. But actually, we might find that asking somebody else what they feel like our strong points are is much more it can give us much more of an idea of what us as individuals are good at. And another thing to keep in mind is that, sometimes it's scary to change because we feel like we spend so much time developing, maybe an SEO career. We've worked 10 years in SEO. SEO is what we want to be, and there's one linear path. It's hard to detach ourselves from this pre-existing path, but we've seen other careers popping up with, AI popped up last year, and now, there was a lot of roles for prompt engineers. So if there's a role that you're interested in, and if there's a path that does not currently exist within your current, sort of avenue that you've created, you can always, deviate and create another one, because there's been other roles that have been created the same way. So I think that's the most scary sometimes part, but also the most constructive one, trying to figure out, if you did have the time and if you could not fail, what would you be doing?
Those are good questions. Yeah, absolutely. I like the way you framed them.
Yeah, I think it helped myself as well. And that's also I had the luck at the time when I started developing my own career to work in an agency that for 8 hours a week, reserved time specifically for professional development. And that could be about anything, right? I knew that my interest and my background was in neuroscience. I ended up in SEO, and I was interested in exploring the connection between the two. And that's how I created my own niche. So I feel you really need to take a good look at what your skill set is currently, but also what your interests are, and think about yourself as a person that has not only the capacity to learn, but also the power to do so, which is given by, plasticity of the brain. There's this sort of, a superpower that we all have, this neuroplasticity, which is the adaptability of the brain. It's what makes us prone to change, to learning, what makes us learn new skills and experiences, but also mindsets, because we, as function of experience, we change even structurally the associations in our brain. So that's something that sometimes is overlooked because we think, oh, I'm old now, I cannot learn something new. And that's a massive stereotype. Learning is a lifelong process. And I think it's important that we foster that.
Would you agree that the type of learning that you do and the focus that you have in your career differs depending on the stage of career that you happen to be in? For example, if you're just getting started, you want to be a sponge. You want to soak up as much as possible. You want to understand what different job roles are doing and how it impacts the role that you're doing as well, and everything about your role itself. But as your career evolves, you want to find things that you're particularly passionate about, but also hopefully lucrative financially as well. And if you can combine both of them and you can niche down and be very, very specific about what you do, what you're passionate about, what you're good at, and then just get hyper focused on that as your career grows, then that would probably bring greater success. Or am I being too simplistic there?
In theory, yes, but I think it depends also on the place that you live for impact. I talk to many people that, have the niche that they want to work in, they have the financial stability, but they don't feel like they're making an impact on the world. And sometimes, there's this concept of the, it's called I think it's called pyramid of needs. I studied it in Italian, so pardon me if it's not like the right one.
Is it, what is it? What, it's not Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is
Maslow,
it?
Maslow, yeah, exactly. So you have like your primary needs and then you have your self-fulfilling needs. And I think, the more we progress in our career, the more we are also faced with that sort of vertex.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at it recently. You get to the top and it's called self-actualization.
Exactly. And so I feel like obviously different stages mean different things. And I feel like I've been through it myself. When you are junior, you just want to advance in your career and you want to, reach that sort of authority maybe, and financial stability for sure is a massive thing. And what I would say about junior roles as well is that obviously you want to soak up as much as you can, but I would bear in mind that you can't excel at everything, and that's okay. And I think, in our culture, and because we are exposed to a lot of successful people at all times, it's very easy to fall into this myth that we can only start learning something if we are already good at something, or if we have a path to becoming excellent. Like, nobody will tell you to pick up horse riding when you're 30 because they're like, oh no, you're going to break your bones. But why not? Like, it's fine. And the same goes for like SEO skills and any kind of other professional and soft skills.
Hopefully you're not going to break your bones doing SEO though.
No, hopefully not, but you never know. Like, industry's changing, what will be next?
Okay, so lots to think about there as well. Is there any preferred learning style that you favor? Should it be just small amounts every day? Should it be bigger blocks of time that you dedicate towards learning? Any particular style of learning, online learning, face-to-face learning that tends to be more effective?
So personally, I prefer face-to-face learning, and I prefer smaller chunks because my attention span is terrible. But again, like, it depends on what works with the individual, and it's an exercise of, I guess, self-analysis. So for example, there is resources from SEOs like Marco Giordano has a great analytics course for SEOs, and he's got a book as well. Then Miriam Gessier has got a course and webinars, I believe they lead as well, on BigQuery. Then Brittany Muller, I've recently participated in a workshop of hers for generative AI. And I found it super helpful because it was interactive. We could code, in the short hour that we had, we learned a lot. There's Lazarina Stoy as well for machine learning and automation. And then Billie Gina Hyde has a course collection called Rank Suite, which is perfect for SEOs because it dives into different areas and different sort of learning paths. They're self-paced and, you can pick and choose whatever you're most interested in. I feel like it's helpful to even, when you have these many choices and these many alternatives to learning, it's important that we set a fixed time to dedicate to learning. The same way that, we dedicate time to a certain activity every week. Maybe we go to the gym, a couple of hours a week. We need to make sure that we dedicate that time to learning as well. And it doesn't need to be massive chunks. Like, obviously, not all of the agencies and not all of the organization will have 8 hours available to dedicate to learning for their employees. But if we can, during your weekend, take an hour to look at, one module of this course or another webinar and so on, because it's really important. We can also set some checkpoints And another thing that I find really helpful is maybe like finding either an accountability buddy or a mentor that can like, help us check in with ourselves.
Well, I'm glad that I'm interviewing the right people for this particular project, because I've already interviewed Miriam Jessier and Billie Gina Hyde as well. A few other people probably that you mentioned as well. So it's great to stay on top of, I think, active SEOs and see what they're doing at the moment, because as you say, it's a field that is changing very quickly. So you've got to make sure that you're learning from people who are being active and doing the right things that work now, you're going into 2025.
Yeah, and I think another thing that really helped me specifically comes from actually a Cirque du Soleil artist, and it's the concept of training a little above your level. So even if you feel like something is not really accessible to you right now, it's not accessible maybe right now and not yet, but try to maybe like take it on anyway. Like if there is, even within the organization, if there is a certain function that you want to cover eventually, but you have no experience in, maybe try to shadow that person that's covering that function. Or, like take courses in, for example, coding. If it's something that you're interested in, but you're like, oh my God, I don't know how to, how to even start. It's okay. Start, like get exposed to it. And then like you can always sort of dial back in. I feel like sometimes we tend to get too comfortable with the notion that, oh, if we're not currently proficient in something, then we might not ever be. But that's just like, self-sabotage.
Yeah, absolutely. If an SEO is struggling for time, what should they stop doing right now so they can spend more time doing what you suggest in 2025?
So it's going to sound counterintuitive because it basically requires to carve in a little more time, but it's a one-off initiative that can free up some time. I would say stop working on autopilot and create a list of all of the things you're doing, all of the things that you wish you were doing if you had the time, and everything that is business critical for your own role. Because you can't control absolutely everything. So the list is going to inform specifically what you can drop from your to-dos to either leave or delegate, what can be automated maybe, and what is something that you should keep doing. And that should already free up some time for you to start learning a new skill or, a new path.
Giulia Panozzo is consultant and trainer at Neuroscientive, and you can find her over at neuroscientive.com. Giulia, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2025.
Thank you so much for having me.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2025, the book, over at SEOin2025.com.